and welcome to Business Unusual. This is where we talk matters kingdom business. In our past broadcast, we said that the future had a shortage of skills, not opportunities. And today, we want to take a look at some of those opportunities that are emerging in and post-COVID-19 crisis. My name is Susan Opio.
And my name is Charles Opio.
Now, a bit of history. You know those moments of did you know that most successful businesses today began after a pandemic, a war, or a financial crisis. And we're going to look at that and ask ourselves where we are and what can we learn from what has happened before. So we're talking about COVID-19. That's where we are. Now, what are the lessons we can look back and learn
from history?
And learn from history.
Like you've said, most massive businesses that we talk about today, the brand names we know, you know, the big players. Most of them began, like you said, either after a war, a pandemic, or an economic recession, or a financial recession. Now, COVID has given us almost a combination.
So we are looking at COVID and saying, this is not new. It would be foolish for the current generation to sit and focus on the COVID-19 instead of going back to history and take some lessons. Because every time we say we're in a war, a pandemic, or a financial recession, we should have a pen and paper and take notes.
And learn from history and see what has happened. And then COVID, in a strange way, people are admitting that COVID currently is almost like the impact of more recent wars. Or a pandemic or economic recession. So it's like COVID has taken all three symptoms in the season we are in. So we need to then separate those three things, look at them, and then relook at COVID in the context of how should we respond or what is going to happen or what is already unfolding. So this is not information we are inventing.
So thank God for search engines, and that is where we say we're in a digital era where you can go back
and look and study.
Get more information for yourself.
Exactly, distilled for you. So first we'll focus on a pandemic. And I know many people have talked about the Spanish flu simply because it is closer to us, but I really want to go beyond that. Spanish flu, anybody can research, it's common. But let's go a little further back to what was called the bubonic plague.
That's not a little further, that is very far back. I mean, we're talking about 1347. I mean, that is very far back.
1347. And it lasted from 1347 to 1351. Those are the years. Now, the bubonic plague, also known as the Black Plague. Please, I won't go into the causes of the plague, what it was about, how it worked, but let me just put it this way. It wiped out 40 or more % of the population in Europe.
I mean, that is, talk about death.
Yes, in those years, we're talking about almost 50, 60 million people. And
remember, we're talking about 1351. We're in 2020. Anyone watching this in 3049, we are in 2020. We're talking about 1351.
So because of that, certain things began to happen. And we're going to look at the impact of that and how it changed what we'd call economy and business at that time. It's a plague, it has an effect on economy. If it's a war, it has affected on economy. If it's a recession, it has an effect on economy. Seems to be the core factor of whatever happens.
Even though there's a lot of death and of course there's a lot of mourning in the nation, we are saying that apart from that, there's also the economic, which is felt way beyond
because it affects day-to-day life. Now, one of the things that ended in that time was something very interesting when the bubonic plague came. It's called SelfDom. SelfDom, S-E-R-F. Now, SelfDom is different from slavery. Slavery is when you're owned, you are part of the property of an owner, and you labor for them for free. SelfDom is slightly different. SelfDom is almost a collaborative agreement. SelfDom, I think, still exists in some parts of India today. And how SelfDom worked was a massive landowner, mostly farmers, would allow people to work on their farm. You work for them, but they didn't pay you. How it worked was you were given food, accommodation, you could stay, and they allowed you to take a bit of the farm, a plot, to feed your family.
So the difference between serfdom and slavery is that slavery, there's nothing you're getting outside food and accommodation.
You are owned, by the way.
You are owned and at the mercy of your master.
Under serf, they didn't really own you. You had a level of freedom, but you see, because you couldn't own land yourself, that's where we get the idea of peasants from.
So they're given a piece of the land of the master. So they owned a bit of something. In slavery, you own nothing. So that's whenever you hear the term peasant, you're talking about serfs. That's where it came from.
Yeah. So you work, you get allowed a piece of land where you grow your own food, but the master gives you that facility. You can live on the land, and he gives you protection.
Okay.
So that you're also safe from crooks, marauders, wars, whatever.
So no one can just walk into your land at any time.
Exactly.
So as much as you're working for the master and he's giving you what you call peanuts, but at least you have protection.
That was it.
And he's given you kind of provision.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Remember, we're coming, that's a season of monarchs and lords and landlords and all those issues. Now, the bubonic plague, when it began to wipe people out, you can imagine who was wiped out first.
The slaves.
The serfs.
The serfs, sorry, the serfs.
The serfs. So what does that happen? Suddenly there was no labor. There was no one to work fields. There was no one to work. So something had to change in the economy. This is also the birth of corporate companies in Europe, where organizations, people had to consolidate their resources and become more efficient and more productive.
Now, when you talk about the end of serfdom, remember you're saying now this is a pandemic.
Yes.
Here are the serfs.
Exactly.
They have died out of this virus.
Yep.
Now, you're saying that after that, for you to get labor.
Exactly.
Now you have to motivate people.
Exactly.
Why should I work for you
I don't need to, and there's so many options.
Yes.
Now there's a competition.
Now, what I'm hearing before we go on is we have what we call the activities in the earth. Now, we are talking here from a kingdom perspective.
Yes.
That when we think of this pandemic, the Black Death between 1947, 1347, and 1351. Now, we hear a pandemic.
Yes.
But in the spirit, we hear heaven intervene.
A shift.
Because if you look at what was happening, you're saying that the serfs who are not being paid.
Exactly.
There is exploitation.
Yes.
And heaven steps in and says, because of this,
something
let's shift.
Changes.
Let's change this.
Absolutely.
Because man is wicked.
Exactly.
And if let alone, man can
continue to be wicked.
Do wonders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what then begins to happen, suddenly you have to pay laborers. Suddenly you can't just get them to work. Everything will be destroyed.
Yes.
So you have to, that's when payment started. To pay people, you have to become more efficient.
Yes.
You have to be productive. You have to be profitable. In the past, you didn't need to be. You owned everything.
Okay.
Didn't really matter. Now, suddenly, order was coming.
Yes.
And under that, that's when private organizations began. We need to consolidate. Some people had died out. Some families had to merge.
Okay.
Some families had to work together and think beyond family.
Yes.
We can't be a family if we are 3 families. Now we must become what? A company.
Okay.
That's how they started.
So you're talking about corporations here also
Yes.
formed out of
a crisis.
The same crisis.
To survive.
Where you're saying that in this family, the person who was holding the business is dead.
Oh, absolutely.
So there's a generation left here wondering what next.
What to do.
So they have to come and merge.
Yes. An interesting thing that came out of that rise of private companies now was a new thing, wills. Now, ownership couldn't just move down. Okay. Initially, it was settled.
Yes.
When somebody died, their children took over. Somebody died, their children took over. The son of a lord was a lord. The son of a serf was a serf. But now something is happening.
A son of a peasant?
It's a peasant. So everything is moving that way.
Okay.
Now here we are. You have to start consolidating, become more efficient. Productivity has to become more efficient. You have to pay people. You have to separate something between now ownership and payment.
All right.
So what do you do if you're an old man about to die? What is your part of this thing? That part that you own in that corporation must be passed on to your children.
So that's where now wills were birthed.
You have to start writing
a will to dictate what you wanted to happen into your property.
Exactly. So if you just look at the bubonic plague as a plague, you will not see how powerfully that plague affected all these activities.
Yes.
And if you begin to go into the different aspects of that plague, it meant that so many dynamics changed.
Yes.
Think of people who, from one point, you could be dictated to how you eat and where you sleep.
Yes.
Tomorrow, you can now negotiate.
And now you're negotiating like, excuse me, this is how you treated me before.
Yes.
Now you're saying, listen, I have a voice.
I have a voice.
And what I'm hearing is, for a long time also, when we go into our history books, we just have the bubonic plague.
Yes.
This is what happened. It started here, it ended here. This is what the death
Yes.
The numbers.
That's all we hear.
That's all we hear.
That's what
but
we
we
hear.
don't hear the effects
Exactly.
of this plague.
You
And
see?
why I'm saying that is because if you look at where we are now, another era, another generation experiencing a pandemic, and we have to ask ourselves, let's go beyond this COVID. Let's go beyond the symptoms of COVID. Let's go beyond that people have lost jobs and hear more than just that.
And drawing from this, we have to ask, if the Black Plague changed how labor operated, we must be sure it will change how labor operates now.
Those are the pen and paper. That's why we are coming here with the pen and paper. That's what we're trying to say.
How does labor change? Suddenly, remember we spoke about not lack of opportunities, but now what? Skill.
Skills now.
So it also meant in the past, a serf was just a serf. Now you have to check for a skilled serf.
Not just a serf. Not just anyone who is available.
Exactly. Suddenly, people who had no identity were beginning to have identity. So the fact that people were asking for pay for labor, it meant quality of labor had to be designed.
Yes.
How do you know who is better at what?
So we are talking about also here skills. When you talk about skills, now there's a way now you can come and say there's a bar.
Exactly.
That these are less skilled, these are more skilled.
Highly skilled.
So like you're saying, even the serfs themselves now had to come to a place of asking themselves, where do I belong? On the low skills or the high skill? Now,
before this, you were simply born in a serf family.
Yes.
Now, you need to be trained for labor. Training was birthed. Can you see how one item...
Which starts breaking the caste order, where you say being a peasant, because a time can come, this is when we're talking about families taking over.
Exactly.
And that is where you see later, when you continue, you will see someone who takes a so-called serf and training them.
Yes.
Almost like giving them a part of this family lineage.
Actually, if you study Europe, especially the Great Britain, one of the things we will remember in our schooling as we studied the early Europe, we started hearing how even people were named. People were named according to a family skill.
Yes.
Interesting. A smith was a smith. A tailor was a tailor.
Yes.
You see how it began to happen? So you do know somebody. That's why we were taught that statement when we were children. Tinker, tailor, soldier, sailor. Rich man, poor man, beggar man, thief. You know, we were taught all those things in school, but the idea was everybody was known by their name.
So when I come and say this is John Taylor,
you knew it's a family of tailors.
It's not just a name.
Yes. This is George Cobbler. These guys make shoes.
That's the family lineage.
Trade.
That's the trade in that family.
So a shift came here that was so amazing that now people were being identified by their trade, not by whether you are a peasant or whether you are a owner. Now you became a trader.
Out of a pandemic.
Exactly.
Something that if you're looking from the athlete.
Absolutely.
Or from an ignorant position, you think, okay, there's this issue, people are dying, and you stop at that.
Yes.
Not understanding it is a shift globally, because even what we're seeing today, COVID-19 has rearranged everything. And we're talking about globally.
Yes.
There's no country today that can boast
that
this thing never came to us.
And if you study that same pathway, there was also a little bit that they had taken as families, and they had borrowed from SelfDom, because they had an idea called apprenticeship.
Explain that.
Now, apprenticeship was when, say I am a tailor. My family, a family of tailors. It is our family business. Notice now it's a family business. It's a trade now. It's no longer just ownership. Now, if you want to come and work and learn and you're not of my family, I would take you in as an apprentice. The apprentice meant, same concept they borrowed from SelfDom. You can sleep here, you can eat here for being taught how to be a tailor. So you would spend time, years, cleaning, sweeping, doing what? Learning the trade. So you don't pay for training, but I don't pay you either. That's where we got our idea of attachment. Listen, history is the same.
So when you talk about internship
attachment, it's just apprenticeship upgraded.
This is where it came from. Yes, it's upgraded.
In other words, what happens, there are many things we do not give up. We carry it forward and we adjust it, but the model remains. So when you became ready, you left and went and started your own tailoring business.
Does your family change name?
Yes, you now became a tailor.
And that's what we saw before. So we're saying that peasants could change their status.
Exactly.
So you don't die a peasant.
No.
If you're going into, of course, like a tailor family, or maybe you go to cobbler, like you said,
yes,
you can change your status.
exactly. So some of the people were wise.
Yes.
If the apprentice was very highly skilled, they made sure they joined the family.
Okay.
Either you got them to marry your child, your daughter,
Okay.
so that the name remained and the business continued. So that worked like that.
Of course, it's all of selfishness.
And that is why wills were invented, because
Yes.
sometimes you need to separate your will from your apprentice.
You want to make sure, even though you've been with me for 30 years,
Yes.
you're still
Not my son, so
You're
my
still
son
not
gets
blood.
priority.
Yes.
So you see how just one plague could create all sorts of ideas. Today, what we are calling ideas, even the labor movements,
Yes.
where did they come out of? People being paid a just wage.
Now,
Where did
let's
it
go
come
back to
out
that
of?
issue of paying for labor.
Yes.
Because you're saying here serfs would work,
Yep.
not be paid for anything,
Yes.
put all your energy, but all you're getting is just that
Skill.
skill.
Yes.
Now, you're saying that with this pandemic,
Yes.
payment started. What we are seeing today
Exactly.
was birthed out of that.
Yes.
Okay?
So if we're to parallel it today, what is already happening? We are reaching a place where people want to pay for skills, not for your time.
Okay.
Because we came to a place where we kind of borrowed serfdom, in a sense, and we borrowed some of these things where you
Yes.
work in a company and you are billed on time, and the company is only interested in its final output. So you are an overhead.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
So as long as we are getting output, we can keep changing the cogs in the wheel. But where we are changing, we're realizing that is not working anymore. The pandemic has made us realize our costs are too high.
Yes.
So what do we do now? We want to pay you for what you do.
What you can do. And
Yes.
that thing you can do is beneficial to us.
Exactly.
Now, let's go back to an issue here I'm hearing when you're talking
Yes.
about all these issues of serfdom.
Yes.
Now, we have said it before that our educational system or
Exactly.
model
Yes.
was birthed out of such things.
There you go.
Where now I'm not training you for your freedom,
Thank
but
you.
I'm training you to come and work for me.
Exactly.
And when you go to these families, of course, let's say, for example, you're going to a tailor family. The tailors are not taking their kids to that place.
Yes.
They're not taking them to that school.
No.
The peasants are going to the school so that they can be lined up to come
Yes.
and work for the tailors.
And because now what are we doing? Now, because you used to get the training, and I used to get service from you,
Yes.
and you used to learn the trade, after some time, now you pay for the training.
You're paying for your own schooling now.
Because now many people want to learn the trade now are not serfs.
Okay? Okay?
They're not serfs anymore.
Yes.
There are people who want to own a similar business.
Yes.
Do you see how it shifts?
So I cannot
how
pay for
time
you.
shifts?
Now pay for
I
yourself.
cannot pay for you to start your own business.
Okay.
The reason you are my apprentice was to upgrade my business.
Yes.
So you learned on the job.
But now when you go to this system,
Yes.
you're actually trying to be independent and be like me.
Exactly.
So I allow you to be. And we've said
Yeah.
something about this education. We said that it is not giving you freedom.
Yes.
And that is one of the things also we will check as we continue with this broadcast on the issue of COVID-19 and our
Yes.
schooling system.
Yes.
That it's still, those are how many years later?
Yeah, exactly.
Where we are coming to break this schooling system, which is creating peasants,
Yes.
not owners.
So basically what happens, and I think that's what we're trying to bring out, is that the Bible says that nothing is new under the sun.
Oh, yes.
In other words, it comes in another form, in another structure,
Yes.
adjustments, changes. Yes, there are improvements, there are upgrades, and there are changes, but you need to be able to see the patterns. If you can read the patterns, you can anticipate the change. If you can see where this was going next, because if one pandemic changed the face of labor
Oh, yes. it
forever,
did. Yes.
okay? Changed how everything did, ended serfdom.
Yes.
Now, so let's ask ourselves, today, what do we call serfdom? That's the first question you
So
must
we
ask.
might be in a same serfdom,
Yes.
but because it's now upgraded, we are not identifying the patterns.
Exactly.
That we are back to where we were in 1341.
Exactly. So what is our serfdom? So these are queries. We're not giving you answers. You have to do your own homework.
Yes.
How do you distinguish serfdom today? And what will COVID do to end serfdom?
Serfdom.
All right? Then ask another question. How does labor change? How is labor being paid now?
Yes.
What was the change? Remember, what caused labor to be paid was the demand.
Yes.
So in this new post-COVID environment,
Yes.
what will be the new demands that cause the laborer to be able to make a demand?
To have a voice.
Exactly.
So you say that when we talk about after the the bubonic plague,
Yes.
something changed.
Exactly.
We changed from a place of this ownership
Yes.
to a people coming into corporations.
Exactly.
Now, could those corporations years later turned back into, taken us back to a place of
serfdom.
to serfdom?
Yeah. Yes.
Now, those are the questions we are asking.
Exactly.
When you look at yourself and say, for example, I'm being taken to school, but when I come out of that school, I have more trust
Yes.
in my papers
Thank you.
than in myself.
So is serfdom my education? Could serfdom be my current qualification?
Okay.
Because serfdom is no longer a person or an organization.
Yes.
It's a mentality.
It's a mentality now.
So that's one question.
And the other question, of course, in that one,
Yes.
is where we take the question further and say, when I go and become, for example, a doctor, am I feeling like I'm entering the doctor family?
Exactly.
Remember when you came from,
Yes,
where we came from, tailors?
apprenticeship.
So am I feeling almost like now when I could qualify in this, I will join this family. But this family now, it's not a specific family.
Yeah, it's not
but
a
it is a
biological
mentality
one. Yes.
where you say there's a mentality of the doctors. I'm joining that family.
There you go.
And it gives me confidence
Yes.
when I feel I've joined that family.
Absolutely.
You know?
Think about it.
Yeah.
So that's, look at all the patterns actually there.
They're there.
The serfdom change,
Yes.
the labor change, the rise of a new corporation.
Okay.
Take doctors. Now we have doctors' plazas.
Yes.
Private corporations. Same patterns.
And for you to join, there's a process we want you to go through.
Exactly.
Yes.
So those are the questions. And what are the wills? Will simply means how is it constituted? What can be done and cannot be done? Who can, in a will simply means what is the order of inheritance here?
Yes.
Who takes over after who? In which manner?
Yes.
Who takes charge after who?
Yes.
So these patterns continue to be with us. The question is, how are the changes going to come?
I think when you talk about this and say COVID now, looking at this whole plague, 1347 to 1351.
Yes.
Looking at this plague and saying, let's look at ourselves today and examine, ask questions. Now notice, you cannot just sit and be ignorant anymore.
Yes.
We have to ask questions.
Exactly.
How is this affecting me? How is
Yes.
this changing how I do things? What is the voice we are getting from COVID-19?
There you go.
Because when it came
Yes.
to give us a voice.
Yes.
Who are the people being given a voice to now question how things are done?
Absolutely.
Or dictate how they will work. And I'm sure we're going to look at some of those
Yeah, we're
things.
going to look at some of those changes. And
Yes.
that's why this particular series, as we head in this direction, we are trying to bring the clarity that those things happen. And we will come to a point where we will talk about what do you do about this? How do you adjust yourself? What
Yes.
are the potential opportunities? Because, listen, opportunities doesn't mean you will succeed. It simply means you have a choice. It is you to wake up. We've
Yes.
spoken about that a lot. So the query that now becomes very crucial, and I think for this particular program,
Yes.
there are 4 things we want to query again.
Okay.
And say, 1, who is a serf today? How are you a serf? Go do that research for yourself.
All right.
What is serfdom now?
Yes.
The second thing you want to ask, paying for labor. What caused that paying for labor, as we have said?
Yes.
What caused it was very simple. Suddenly, there was a gap
Yes.
for skills. Let me use an example from the Bible. In Egypt, we know that before they left Egypt, they were told, ask for the gold.
Yes.
And we can already tell that the gold must have been made in the shape
Of their
of
gods.
gods or whatever. And I always extrapolate, this is me, it's not in the Bible,
Yes.
this is my extrapolation,
Okay.
that it is slaves who made those gold things. And that slave must have been called Bezalel and Aholiab. Because who else made the carvings? So as long as there were slaves, serfs, they made what the master wanted out of the ship. When they moved and God said, I have filled him with my spirit, the same person now has a skilled labor that is required to build the tabernacle.
Yes.
Something
so to build
completely
something
different.
that God wants to see in the earth.
Exactly.
So when God broke them from the slavery of Egypt,
Yes.
he was taking them somewhere. This particular, because we see plagues in Egypt.
Yeah.
We see the plagues of Egypt.
Same, another pandemic change and economic change.
Yeah, that season of that pandemic
Yes.
brought changes.
Exactly.
That brought slaves
Yes.
from that place of depending on the master
Yes.
to a place where now they are listening to God.
Exactly.
Okay.
A slave who was making statues for the master,
Yeah.
to a slave who made the Ark of the Covenant that became a design for the kingdom.
Yes.
So those are the seriousnesses of shifts.
We are talking about the bubonic plague, 1347 to 1351, and we see the effects of this plague. Now, we're asking ourselves, we are the center
Yes.
of another plague.
Absolutely.
What is being dismantled
Yes.
and what is emerging. Thriving in and post-COVID-19. That's what we're talking about. This is business unusual. Keep tracking.